Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
Welcome to High Strangeness. I'm Tony, and this is a place where we talk all things strange and unexpected in our reality. Now, one of the strange and crazy things in our society is sports fans and how completely fired up people can get. So by most opinions, football is king here in the United States. And as crazy as professional football fans are, college fans are right there, maybe even more crazy. And so most people know about big rivalries like Ohio State and Michigan, Alabama and Auburn, Army and Navy, and in the past we had USC and Notre Dame. Big rivalries. But I'm here to tell you that there's a huge rivalry right here in Utah that generates heat and emotion that is hard to match anywhere you go. Now, Utah versus BYU Holy War rivalry is a thrilling century-old clash between two current, mostly powerhouse football teams in the West, marked by intense games and dramatic finishes, a passionate fan base. And this matchup epitomizes college football's enduring legacy, competitive spirit, and showcases the fierce pride and enduring legacy of these Utah-based universities. What heats up even more, though, is this. The fact that both of these universities are only 50 miles away from each other. Now, what does that mean? That means these fan bases are intermingled with each other. Many are neighbors, co-workers, friends, family. And you know what that means. Fighting, sometimes fun, but sometimes serious. And things can get nasty when this topic comes up. Now, we're not really going to show you nasty here today, I don't think, but we're going to show you passion and desire for your team, their team. Now, what I did do to illustrate this is I was able to get together a group of people, a small panel, that are BYU and Utah fans, and so that we could talk about this holy war. So here we go. I've got these great panel members here today. I'm going to start off by inviting them to introduce themselves for you. We're going to go around the room here, and we're going to start by getting their name, what they do for a living, and how long they've been a fan, and what caused them to be a fan. So let's go ahead and start right now with Bill.
Hey, I'm Bill. Been a fan of BYU since I was about 13, 14 back in Jersey. How that came about was I was at a bowling alley, and back in Jersey, South Jersey, everybody's a Penn State fan. You grew up Penn State. And Penn State was getting crushed, like 38-3. And I was like, who is this that's doing this to Penn State? And it was BYU. So, back then you followed the Eagles, NFL. I didn't follow much college football at that age. But I started following BYU, and then who would have known that 30-some years later I would end up having a season ticket holder and moving out here. But,
Awesome.
I go to every game. I love BYU football. I'm one of the few BYU fans that don't hate Utah, though. I don't hate them. My son, if he was on us, he'd be like, I hate them. I'm like, I don't hate them. I mean, if they win, it's good for the state. He's like, I could care less about the state. I hate Utah football. But I don't hate them. While you were saying my job, I find jobs for people with disabilities. And then I just teach them household supportive living skills, like how to maintain a home and pay bills and personal hygiene and stuff like that for people who have artistic or other physical disability needs.
Awesome. Great. Rex, go ahead. You're up.
All right. My name is Rex. I work in medical imaging sales, and I would say I started becoming a fan of the University of Utah back in the early 90s as a teenager. Back then, I was an enormous basketball fan, and I really loved watching the rugby and college hoops back at that time. Watching Rick Majerus and how he developed teams and players and how he would dominate the WAC at that time, the Western Athletic Conference, and the run that the Utes made in the March Madness throughout the 90s and into the early 2000s, where they had a shot at the national championship in 1998 against Kentucky. While I was out with Brandon, who's also on this panel, he and I were, my fandom really goes back to, like I said, the Rick Majerus teams of the running youth basketball and the run they made in the late 90s for the national championship. And then my interest in basketball started to wane. I didn't follow it as passionately, but coincidentally, my interest in football started to pick up and take its place, which was great timing because Utah football was decent in the 90s. Nothing really to get too excited about, but it was obviously in the early 2000s that some major changes took place with Utah football. They made a name for themselves by busting the BCS, and you can kind of look back and say the rest is history ever since then. So nowadays, the sport that I follow primarily, almost exclusively, is college football, and it's the happiest time of the year. It's going to kick off this Thursday, and from here until February, I don't have to worry about what my plans are on Saturday. It's college football. I'm busy. Don't bother asking me what I'm doing. My schedule's full. We got college football. That's all I got to worry about.
I love that. That's awesome. Thanks, Rex. Appreciate that. Let's go down to
I'm
Brandon.
Brandon. I'm a transportation manager for an underground sprinkler company here in Salt Lake. My interest in Utah started probably in the early '90s. So growing up, I didn't watch much football. I didn't really have an allegiance either way. But in the early '90s, my dad got a job at the University of Utah Police Department, and so from there on out, started bleeding red. But my big interest I was kind of like Rex. I did watch a little bit of the basketball. I thought it was pretty exciting when we were back in the Majerus days. It was fun to watch at the time. Always competitive. They're always in the national scene, especially during March Madness. But a lot like Rex, my interest in basketball kind of started to wane. It wasn't really until early 2000s. Actually, Rex was he probably my biggest influence on getting into football. We started working together in 2000. We've known each other since '98, but kind of started then. He started going to games, and we both were attending the University of Utah, so it just was in my blood at that point. My dad worked there, and then I started going to school there, and just from there, I just started really following it, and had some really good BYU fans here that they're in my local neighborhood that were just really diehard BYU fans, and so got a great kick out of the rivalry each year, messing with them when we'd win, and they'd mess with me when they won. Fortunately, we've had a number of years where we did more of the messing than they did. So, but that's how I got started. And, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. Okay, Kendall. Now you're a guy who lived and grew up in Utah County. So go, my friend.
Yeah. My name's Kendall. I'm an international project manager. I grew up in Utah County. I was born in the Provo Hospital, and for you two guys that lived out east, you'd know this name. Chad Lewis's dad delivered me as a baby. Wow. So that's how Provo I am, right? Chad Lewis being a BYU football player that ended up playing for the Philadelphia Eagles.
That's right.
So I grew up right there in Provo till I was 3 years old, lived in Utah County, grew up a BYU fan. I watched BYU. I remember hearing the stories of the Miracle Bowl. I remember hearing all these great stories. Steve Young was my hero. Still is. Steve Young's a great guy. I really do think that Steve Young's a stand-up dude. And I would go to the BYU football game tailgates, and I'd win tickets, and I'd go into the stadium. My grandma and grandpa lived walking distance from Lavelle Edwards Stadium. So I grew up doing that and loving that. My brother ended up going to the University of Utah for college, and he was my oldest brother. And he actually was a U of U fan when he was in his teens, started then, and he kept cheering for the Utes. And on my 18th birthday, we played BYU at Rice Eccles Stadium, and I went with my brother for my birthday to that game when it was was not Rick Majerus, it was Ron McBride's final game. I don't know if you remember that game. It was a really good game. Utah won. The fans tore down the goalposts, both of them, and sent them up the stadium, up right above the muss where I was standing. So I touched both of the goalposts as they went over me, and security guards were running up the stadium trying to make sure that we didn't toss them over the edge. And then they got to the top and just set them down. Nobody was hurt. Nothing.
That's
good. It was a really good game, and so really it fired me up, got me thinking about it, and I became a U of U fan from that time. In fact, I like to say I grew up a BYU fan, and then I grew up and became a Ute fan. And so here I am today, full-blown Ute fan, graduate from the University of Utah.
So all I got out of that was he learned vandalism at a young age.
I did not tear down those
That's all I
goalposts.
got out of that. I didn't hear nothing else but...
Hey,
Awesome.
Yep.
Thanks,
So I end up, I'm a graduate, a University of Utah graduate, and I just love the Utes. And I have season ticket. I'm a season ticket holder. I love them. I'll go to every game.
Awesome. Thank you. And since Bill's the only BYU guy right now on the stand, I'm going to join in as BYU guy. Now I want everybody to know I've got a Utah jersey and a BYU hat because I'm a fan of both. But today I'm going to play the side of BYU, and I'll tell you a funny story for me, which is I'm also somebody who grew up on the East Coast, and Philadelphia Eagles, that was my team, loved football, but I didn't really watch a whole lot of college until I was a little older. But one of the funniest things that happened to me was I was in a sports bar in Philadelphia one time, and there were games going on all over the place, and I started yelling, "Go BYU!" And everybody just kind of looked at me because here I am in this sports bar, everybody's drunk, and they're looking at me like, BYU? And so I just said, hey, I like BYU. So it was pretty funny.
A lot of BYU
awesome.
guys have gone on to. A lot of BYU guys have gone on to play at BYU. Vaisa Kahima, Chad Lewis.
Eagles, you mean? Yeah. Eagles,
Yeah. Vaisa Kahima became a huge celebrity in Philadelphia, not necessarily for his football play, but there was a particular game where he made a great play and he went down to the goalpost and just started fighting the goalpost as they were playing the Rocky music. And he went on to be a news broadcaster. I mean, that just blew up his celebrity. It's not his career, but his statue in that Delaware Valley. But yeah, a lot of guys have gone on to play. Chad Lewis, a lot.
Yeah. This is awesome, guys. Thanks so much for sharing that information. Now we're going to hop into a couple things. For those of you listening, we're going to go into a few trivia questions. And I'm asking the guys not to pull out their phone. Hopefully we can just see if we know it or not. And then we're looking for your best memories or experiences while being a fan of your team. And we're also going to find out why these fans love their team so much. And then we will, at the end, see if we can convert the other side to why our team, whether it's BYU or Utah, is the best. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go forward. And I'm going to start off by asking this trivia question to the group. Number one, the first Utah-BYU football game was when? Does anybody know?
yeah.
Depends on who you ask.
That's a good answer.
That's a highly controversial topic.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it's whether you count BYU Academy or BYU University.
All right. We're going to say
So
academy.
1896.
That one I don't know, because I think that's the university reckoning.
They both agree
might be
on
wrong on that, though.
1896. If you use BYU Academy, 1896. Very good. And here's the thing. So, really, that's true. You know, Rex brought up something. There is a period of time between like 1900 and a little bit later than that, that there's actually some discrepancy between the two schools about what the number of games are played in the seasons, win-loss records, and that sort of thing. We'll get into it for just a minute. But for the moment, 1896, that's a long time, and that was the first game between those two schools. Does anybody know the result of that game? Who won? What was the score?
12-7 Utah.
It's a tough one. Close. 12-4.
I thought it was like
What was it, Tom?
I don't know how it's how four. That was 4.
Two safeties, maybe.
12-4. I don't even know how that's possible.
Yeah,
That's
that
what
was
it
two
was.
safeties.
Yeah, that must have been it.
Hey, it could have been multiple
That's true.
safeties. It could have been all safeties.
That's true. All right, cool. Next question. Now, which player holds the record for the most passing yards in a single game in the Holy War rivalry? Does anybody know which quarterback has that record? Get extra points. if you
Ty
know.
Detmer?
That's what you said, Detmer.
That's hard.
I was going to say Detmer.
Yeah.
That's pretty much
Ty
Detmer.
Detmer?
Yes, it is. Ty Detmer. 1991, 599 yards. Amazing. All right.
Was that his Heisman year as well?
he won the Heisman in '91. He came in third in '91. He won it. I think he won it in '90, and came in third in '91, or vice versa. So the year he won it obviously, and the year before, the year after, he came in third. The only Heisman winner at BYU.
Yeah.
How many does Utah
I
have?
met him the year before. We'll talk about that later.
Okay. I want to ask you, what is the largest win margin by either team?
Oh.
Well, do you know who won by the most? And do you know the biggest margins for each of the teams? So it's kind
I
of
think
two
Utah.
questions.
I think 59 points is one of them.
59-10 was that
Close.
in LaBelle Edwards Stadium? No, that's not it.
Very close. Who's the winner of that
No.
game? Does anybody know?
I think Utah won
Utah.
that game. They beat BYU by 59 one year.
So I'll tell you what it was. Close. These are good guesses. And you guys, I mean, hey, I want everybody to know I didn't tell these guys anything. They didn't know what they were getting into here. So this is just off the top of their head for the most part. So that's pretty impressive. I had the benefit of looking some of this up. I wouldn't know these answers. But BYU in 1980 wins 56-6. That's the biggest win. But the closest and the second win is in 1922. Utah wins 49-0. So overall, BYU only got 1 point more and the best win there. So, all right. Here's one for Utah. Which Utah player holds the record for the longest touchdown run in a Holy War history game? Anybody know? I think this one's kind of tough.
Is it going to be Brandon?
The longest
Warfield?
run?
The longest run. Yeah.
That's
Nope.
the longest run. It's going to be tough.
Longest touchdown run.
Is it from?
Well,
was that right?
let me see. I'm going to go two names. If it belongs to the Utes, I'm going to go Jamal Anderson. And if it's BYU, I'll go with Tyler Aguiar, or whatever his name is.
Yeah, Algier. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else have any other opinions?
Algier, yeah.
Is that the longest? Is that from?
Jamal Anderson's a pretty good guess, but I would be really stabbing at the dark.
Is it from the front? Is it? Yeah, I was just gonna say, is it
you were
a
saying something?
run from line of scrimmage, or is it just any run? Any? That makes sense. Can we return?
I think it's just I think it's from the. I think if I remember
From
correctly, it
scrimmage,
was from line of scrimmage. Yeah. So I'll help a little bit.
John
1988.
White? Was it John
19
White?
back.
1988
1988.
is the year. I didn't know this one, so I'll help.
No?
Eddie
Oh,
Johnson. Eddie Johnson. I didn't know this.
Oh.
So, Eddie Johnson.
Dang
That's,
it.
I should have known that because that's the record that Zach Moss broke to take over the most rushing yards for the University of Utah as a running back. Eddie Johnson
Yeah.
held the record before him. good known.
Okay, so depending on who you ask, but it really doesn't matter because the win percent is about the same. BYU and Utah have faced, by some, 101 times. If you go with either one of the claims, the winning percent is about the same. So who has the edge on wins between Utah and BYU?
Utah.
Utah.
Unfortunately, it's
You're
Utah,
saying Utah.
59 to like 32. This bad.
It's
Yeah,
it's
it's bad.
62%.
59, 32 or
62%.
yeah, something like that. Yeah, unfortunately.
It's a little closer than that, but it's 62%.
I just remember for like when I first moved. I remember when we first moved to Utah. BYU was like they were like win 2 and then lose 1. And when I first moved there, I thought it was close, and then I looked it up back in the early 2000s, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So it's like BYU can never beat them.
Yeah. So I mean, depending on who you ask, it's 59 to 32 Utah, or 62 to 35 Utah. So either way, Utah kind of owns them. Now, this is interesting. Who has the longest win streak? Does anybody know?
I think it's tied.
Great
It's
call.
tied at 9, right?
Yeah, great call. Yes, Utah 9 wins from 1929 to 1937, and 2010 to 2019. BYU had 9 wins from 1979 to 1987. Pretty cool. All right, this is our last
Yeah, I know
trivia
that
question.
from that, the local.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say I know that from the local or the most recent wins. We were at 9 wins, and
Yeah.
then last year BYU broke that streak to not allow us to take the record of most wins. in a
Yeah.
row.
Yeah.
It was us tied, and we had to give 10% back.
Exactly. All right, this is the last trivia question. Has this game always been called the Holy War? Does anybody know?
I don't. I would think not.
Okay.
I think back in the day it might have been offensive to call it that.
You guys agree with that? No, or
I can't imagine it's always been called the Holy War. I just don't know if it has something. If there's a name before that, like
Wasn't it like the
Battle of the Beehive State, or
Beehive
something
Boot or
weird
something like that?
right?
Or-
Yeah, I think it was called something else before that, but it was in the 1990s that one of the sportscasters actually started saying that, and it caught on. Because actually before that, the Holy War was set aside for BYU versus Notre Dame. So that's interesting. Okay. Appreciate that, guys. That was tough. I mean, once again, everybody, these guys were asked these questions cold, without any prep and no phones. So it's a hard one. It was a hard one. But what I want to know now, and what I'd like you to do, is share with the listeners about just what are some things that you love about game time, whether it's at home or in the stadium, that make why you're such a fan of your team, right? It doesn't have to be the Holy War games. This is just throughout the season. I want you to think and consider the stuff that just you love so much about your team. So I'm going to start and go around the room backwards this time. We're going to start with Kendall, and I'd like to know what is like experience at the ball game. What experience do you love when you go to a ball game? Is it a tailgate or something? What is that you love?
I was telling everybody earlier that I've built my fandom with Twitter as an aid there. So I've really dug into the Ute Twitter and learned about people and talked about stats and recruiting and off-season talk. And it's been a really great experience for me to show up to the games early, to go to the tailgates, to meet people in real life, people that I've talked to and bantered with and had those experiences with. I've really built some really amazing friends and people that I want to hang out with outside of Ute games, go have dinner with them, go golfing. enjoy that. And so when I go to the games, it's my family. Everybody that is at that tailgate, they're family, and I'm there to have fun with them, to cheer on my boys. And so I really love being there for the social aspect of it, and then going into the game and getting into it and seeing just the beauty of Rice Eccles Stadium, especially at night. It's just it's a top tier environment. I love it. It's so fun. It's a small crowd, but we are loud. And when I say small, it's not small because we can't fill a stadium. It's small because we fill it to capacity, and that's all we got. And we make it rock, and it's a ton of fun to be there. And there's just so many great traditions that go along with that. So I love everything about it, the gathering together, the way that our fans travel to away games. I was able to go to the Rose Bowl, which I believe we'll talk about good experiences later, but just the way that we are able to bring our family with us as we travel, it's fantastic. It's a great time.
It's awesome. Thanks, Kendall. That is cool. Let's go to Brandon. Brandon, share.
So I think for the game time experience for me is it's the anticipation. So especially the first game of the year, it's just that anticipation of seeing what kind of product we're going to see out on the field. The environment's always awesome. The fans are tremendous. It's always an electric, like Kendall said, an electric environment, especially at night. I agree with him on that. But just being able to, you've got that whole off season of hype and wondering what's going to happen this year, and are we going to correct the mistakes that we made last year? Are we going to capitalize on the good stuff that we have? And then just being at the game and being the fans near you. I go to a lot of the games with Rex actually, and that's something that I've been doing for a number of years. So I enjoy going with him, hanging out with a good buddy of mine, and just experiencing the wins and the losses together, and rooting for your team no matter what. It's just it's hard to put it into words, but it's just it's all encompassing. That's what I just love about it.
That's awesome. Yeah. And there's nothing better than that. Like especially when you can't describe it, it's just inside you, and it's like, man, I love this thing. I love that. Rex, how about you?
Boy, that's a weighty question. I've been a season ticket holder since 2008. And for those that know Utah football history, 2008 was also the year that they went to the Sugar Bowl and beat Alabama. So my first year as a season ticket holder, they go 13-0, beat Nick Saban in the Sugar Bowl, and it was just, to get those seats and to be that season ticket holder for that first year and to continue that every year thereafter, it's just been an incredible experience. For 16 years, I've had the same seats, and I'm not exaggerating in the slightest, where everybody that I sit around has remained the same for that entire 16-year period. Nobody gives up their seat. The same fans show up every year, and it's like, okay, guys, we're back. We're all back again. Good to see you. It was a long off season. That sucked, but if football's back, we're finally here, and we're just bubbling with anticipation. We're about to explode, and it's that there's this electricity, there's this energy in the stadium right before kickoff that is palpable. And unless you've been in Rice Eccles Stadium and felt it yourself, you really have no idea what we're talking about. But for those that have experienced it, it's just one of the coolest experiences. And then to have some of the most incredible games, in most recent history, watching Utah beat Oregon on the way to the Rose Bowl, and watching them beat USC on the way to the Rose Bowl, and just time and time again, teams that come in that are supposed to beat us, and this mentality that Utah football has that starts from their coaching staff with Kyle Whittingham all the way down, of this blue collar, work it out, work it out, hustle you, and we're going to impose our will upon you, and we don't care how talented you are, you're not going to beat us here in our house. And to watch that play out on the football field time and time again is one of the things I just love about Utah football.
That's awesome. Thanks, Rex. Bill, you're up, my friend.
All right. So one of the things I look forward to is I live in a house with 5 boys. and they all like Utah, except for my son Gabriel. So it's like him and I weekend. Every time they come, so it's like real exciting. We've been doing it 15 years, so he's 27 now, so it's kind of cool. We got great seats, but the thing I like too about BYU football too is two things. One, it's really affordable to go to a game. I mean, I've been to a couple of Utah games, but they are expensive for tickets. I mean, I pay $600 for 2 tickets for a season. So the other thing is I like our stadium because it's old and the history of it. I'm into that stuff. I mean, Utah should have an old stadium too, right? But when you walk through the halls of BYU, it's a little bit different than it is walking through the halls at Rice Eccles. But and the other thing I like too is when you guys are in a major conference and we were independent for the longest time, so we never knew who we were going to play until the season almost started. And then you get pumped up for like big time games, like when Texas comes or something like that. And it's pretty cool because you never know who's going to come until the year before. Notre Dame should have been here a couple times, but they keep backing out. So we don't get the big games like you get at home all the time. So when we do, it's like really, really big. You know, so the celebration's cool. One time I went to the Utah game with Tony's son and daughter-in-law, and I went with my son. And we parked right in front of the stadium where I usually park. We had a picnic table out, everything like that. I'm wearing BYU gear. My son's wearing BYU gear. His son and daughter-in-law wearing Utah gear. And ESPN actually walked up and put the cameras on us and interviewed us. So, and they're like, "Can you guys get along?" I'm like, "Yeah, you know, we have to. We're family, you know." Making jokes and everything like that. I just like the history of it. I like the stadium. I like the unknown of the schedule going into next year, but now that's changed because now we're in the Big Ten. You know, we've moved conference.
Yeah. That's good, man. Appreciate that. So I'll step in and also share a little bit on the BYU side. So I don't go to a whole lot of games, but I do like the growl. That makes me laugh every time I hear that. When it goes, wow, like that, I laugh. But I'm more of I used to coach football, so I really like what's happening down on the line, and that's the biggest and most exciting part of a game for me, and I can't see it if I'm not sitting up very close. So a lot of times for me, it's better to watch a game at home. So for me, I enjoy watching the game at home, and I'm blessed because ever since the DVR came along, it helps my marriage. Because before I used to have to kick everybody out of my house and out of my room and say, "Leave, I'm trying to watch the game." And at least now I can pause it, let somebody talk to me, and let them move on. But I love throwing chips and salsa on my lap, and I love watching what's happening down on the line and up close. And so that's one of the things I love about the games. So there you go, guys. Thank you for that. And let's run through a couple things quickly. So we're going to go through a few kind of quick answers. And the first one I'd like to know is, what is your favorite food or snack, and where's your favorite section to sit in the stadium? So let's go backwards this time, and I'll start, and I'll just say I like to eat everything. So there's nothing I don't like. So there you go. Bill, your favorite snack, and where do you like to sit in the stadium?
Yeah, I like a pretzel and a Coke, and my favorite section is my seat, section 24, row 4, seats 1 and 2.
Seats.
We don't get no better than that. Come right out of the tunnel. Except for this year because I wasn't given enough donor money. I got moved up a couple rows, but
Yeah.
I like being in the end zone on an angle. Yeah.
Awesome. Rex, how about you? Is it where you currently sit, or do you have a place you like better?
No, it's where I currently sit. I'm in section 234, which is about the 20-yard line. It's 28 rows up, so you got a pretty good high view of the field, but you're not so far up in the nosebleeds. It's a pretty good balance of and being in a good spot. And it's also close enough to the north end zone when opposing teams come down and they're trying to make a push for a score. We're right in that section where it can get really loud and really rowdy. And I've had plenty of opportunities with the Freedom Club coming to me saying, "Hey, would you like to move your seats or upgrade or do this and that?" And for 16 years I've been like, "No, I'm good where I am. Thank you." All the fans around me I've known for that entire time, and it's almost like a family that we have there. We just no one once we got parked there in those seats, no one's ever moved in that entire time. So I love those seats. That's my favorite spot in the stadium.
That's awesome. There's nothing better than where you're at being the place you like. So that's cool.
What was your snack? We didn't hear a snack from Rex.
Oh yeah, sorry. There's a vendor there that sells this fantastic beef brisket that if you can get there in time and get it, great. But they sell out quick. So the beef brisket.
Yeah, I second that beef brisket. And there's also, I second that beef brisket, and they also have a DP cheesesteak down there, a cheesesteak for you Philly boys. It's pretty good. This seats wise, I love Rex's seats too. It's a good angle. I've had, like I mentioned earlier, my dad was a police officer there, and I used to go to the games with him and just walk around the stadium. But I got the opportunity to hang out with the grounds crew when they used to be at the south end zone right on the field, and that was pretty awesome. I was there for Rob McBride's last game when the field goals came down, and that was pretty cool. So yeah, I'd say Rex's seats.
That is awesome. Awesome. And you get to use them sometimes. So you go with him and use those
he invites
seats?
me quite a bit, so it's good.
Nice. Not bad. Not bad at all. All right, Kendall, how about you, my friend?
I am surprised that the cowboy corn dog lasted this long. Again, went through 2 youths. I love my cowboy corn dog, the spicy one. That's a good one. That's my favorite. I haven't tried the brisket, or I know that I've tried DP outside of the stadium. Maybe I'm going to go steal some brisket from you. So if it sells out next time, you can blame me. I have had the opportunity to sit all over in the stadium. I sat in the muss for a while. I had season tickets in the north end zone. That I actually just moved to the south end zone for this coming season. And so I don't know if the south end zone is going to be any better or worse. And I'm excited to experience that and figure that out. My brother has tickets in the west, so I've kind of seen every angle. I really did love the north end zone with their fans, how loud they are. I was on right down the middle on the 8th row, looking straight down the field. It is hard to kind of judge yardage at that angle, so that might be my only regret for sitting there. But I loved it. The energy there is amazing.
That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to just one more two-part question of this type. I'm curious, what is your favorite uniform helmet combination for your team? And what's your favorite moment? What's your favorite rivalry moment? Go ahead. Let's start backward. Let's just go backwards again. So, Kendall, would you be able to start us there?
Okay. Yeah, red. I've got to go with that combo, and specifically the 2018 rivalry game, where it was at Rice-Eccles Stadium. BYU went up early, and it was looking ugly until the third quarter. Utah got a pick six, turned it around, won the game, and in a fantastic fashion. Jason Shelley leading the team, and having that hurdle over the BYU football team. It was just, it was unreal. I was pulling my hair out for most of the time, and finally you got to experience that. Now you get to see my son. Hello, this is my son.
How you doing?
Yeah, so it was a great time. I love that rivalry moment.
Awesome. Thank you. Brandon, you're up.
Favorite combination. I do like when we do a blackout. There was one year they did, I guess it would have been around Veterans Day, in November sometime. They did, each one of the helmets were uniquely painted with something, like with one of the four armed forces. It had like an aircraft carrier on it, some airplanes, and Coast Guard and Marines Army. It was all of them. I just remember them being each one was individually hand painted, and they were fantastic. But I do like the cleanness of the white and red, just traditional white red with the interlocking U. But So I think I got a couple there, but I do like the blackout, and those helmets were were fantastic. Um, yeah, as far as favorite rivalry, I can't recall the year, but it came down to a field goal with BYU, and we blocked their field goal. It was a 20-yard gimme, something like that, and we knocked it down, and I can remember just going nuts, and that was a pretty good year. Yeah.
That was Brandon Burton.
Got his big paw on it.
That was good. Rex. Yeah. Rex, you're up.
All right, my favorite uniform combination, as it's already been stated before, is red, red, red. Red helmet, red jersey, red pants, with the drum and feather logo on the helmet. I'm a big fan of the drum and feather logo. With Brandon's hat, you see that now. He's wearing that. So yeah, that's my favorite uniform combination. Oh, there, yeah, it's all there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and on my shirt as well. Yeah. So yeah, that's I love that uniform combination. And favorite rivalry moment. That's a tough one. I like the one that Kendall brought up earlier about coming back from that game. I'll just tell this quick story because I think it's pretty cool. I was there with my two oldest boys, Max and Eric. And Eric, he's 16 now, so he was 10 at the time. And I remember at halftime, he was just cranky. Because I think we were down 28-0. And he's like, they're doing horrible. I'm so upset. We got to get out of here. And, why are we even here? They're going to lose. The streak's over. Yada, yada, yada. And I was and my older son, Max, he was more stoic about it. He was just like, all right, this kind of sucks. But he wasn't complaining like my other son, Eric. And I told Eric, it's like, hey, when you're a Utah fan, you stick around for the whole game, no matter what. You cheer them on, no matter what. And if Utah gets their tails kicked today, that's okay. We pat them on the shoulder and wish them well, and we'll see them next season, and or next game. But you never give up on your team. You always cheer for them, and you never know. You might just see one of the most epic comebacks of your life. And then he decides to go get some. I think he goes off to the bathroom. And my older son Max said, "You really think we have a chance that we're going to come back in this game?" And I said, "No, there's no way. They're playing so bad right now. There's no way they're going to be able to turn this around at half and make a run at this." And then and so my older son's like, "Yeah, I kind of agree with you. This is going to be rough." So anyway, my son comes back, Eric, from the bathroom, and then we see that most incredible comeback ever. And I just remember turning to Eric at the end of the game and saying, "You see, this is why you never leave. This is why you never give up on your team, because of moments like this that you're never going to forget." And it was really just one of those great moments in Utah BYU football history. But it was also one of those times where I could turn to my son and teach him something valuable about life in general, about never giving up, never letting go of hope, persistence, always just keeping your head down and keeping your shoulder pressed against whatever challenge you're fighting for, and seeing it through to the end. But I think I don't want to piggyback off that experience too much. I think one of the other great rivalry moments, and I forget which year this was, but it was also a field goal moment at the end of a game where there was three attempts to make a field goal, and I think two times we were called for some type of penalty. I forgot what the circumstances were for penalty, but in both cases, BYU didn't get the field goal in those first two attempts. If they had a third attempt, like, okay, great, this is where they're going to get the field goal, and either send it into overtime or win the game. And then there was the big doink, and there was I remember there's a BYU player on defense who was also doing special teams, and he sees the kid go up, and he starts to celebrate.
Yeah.
He thinks it's going in, and it doinks, and you just see him collapse on the field in just like agony and suffering. Like, oh no, we just lost. And so I like to count that game as three victories for us because, you know, we won it 3 times with those 3 missed field goals, and that was just a great experience in the last episode for the rivalry game.
That was one of the most amazing games. That ending there, oh my gosh, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, Bill, you're up, my friend.
Okay, so I keep freezing up over here, guys, so sorry about that. So,
You're good.
one game I remember, and then the next day, the coach was fired, is when BYU destroyed Texas. And I think it was 2013 or whatever it was. But anyway, 550 yards on the ground. I don't know if you guys remember that or heard about that one. It was like a monsoon, heavy downpour. It delayed the game because of lightning, so it had everything. I mean, that's just 550 yards on the ground. I don't care who you are. That's impressive. And then there was another game where Jamal Williams had 5 touchdowns. But another game that sticks in my head, it's the one where BYU lost. And I only mention it because it was that good of a game. Do you remember a couple of years ago when they played in I think it was the Las Vegas Bowl? It was BYU versus Utah. That game sticks out to me because that was just a hell of a game. As I get older, I can't remember, but then they go to overtime or something, or came real close to, had an opportunity to go to overtime. But anyway, I only bring that up because it's close. A loss, but hey, man, you can have great games that you've been witness to that were losses, but that one was just a back and forth battle. And you said something about uniforms. I like the
your combination.
I like the royal black. I like the old school. But
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, I'll take one here as I answer for BYU. So I do like the royal blue number 2. Number 1, I love the blackout. I mean, I love the blackout for BYU with that blue with the white accent and then the black everywhere. I love it. And so that's my favorite. In terms of rivalry game favorite moments, I actually, because I like both teams, I love them all. But last year, I was actually at the edge of my seat more than anything because will BYU win finally was my thought because it'd been so long since they'd won. And then they pull it off, and I was pretty excited for them. So I'll have to say last year was my favorite for the rivalry matchup. So, okay, cool, guys. This is great. Now, we are eating up time pretty good. I had a bunch of other questions, but I think it's best if we just jump in and start talking about should I say make the case for why your team is the better team. And who wants to go first there? Is anybody? Don't be shy.
honestly, like, I got no room. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I'm not stupid. You know, I'm a BYU fan, but I'm not brain dead either. I mean, Utah is the better, more. I mean, come on, let's just be real, right? But we do have a national title, and we do have a Heisman winner. You know, but I don't know. I mean, if you want me to lighten it up, be funny, you can go to a BYU game relatively cheap. I mean, what's it cost to go to one Utah game? What's a ticket for Utah? I pay $600 for 2 tickets, free parking. The food prices are reasonable. Free refills on your drinks, not beer. You know? It's like, I'm not going. You know, it's just a great atmosphere. I mean, I've been to a couple of Utah games, and it's expensive. It really is, and I'm sure Utah's getting it. BYU's getting there. BYU's kind of turning there a little bit. It's getting more expensive, but it'd be really hard for me to convince someone to leave. It's like talking to Luke Skywalker, saying, "Hey, come on over to the dark side." It's a little bit hard.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
No, that's good, and you're honest. But there are good parts that you brought up about going to games.
Affordability,
stuff like that.
not knowing who you're. Yeah, you're the unsuspected. I mean, I don't have to worry about getting mugged. You know. Let me ask you a question. So, I've been to one rival game at Rice Eccles. How do they treat the opposing fans? And seriously, when the people come to BYU, it's nothing but love. And I'm sure it's like that in Utah. I'm sure you guys aren't. I grew up in Philly. We threw people off the building. Well, not me. Make that real clear. I mean, how is the fan base towards the opposing teams? Can it get pretty crazy, or is it pretty respectful? And who are they not the most respectful to? Would it be BYU?
Good question.
I would say 99% of the fan base is really respectful to opposing fans that show up to the game. You have that 1% outlier of the fan base that are, I mean, let's face it, they're jerks, and
Yeah.
if they've had a little too much fun tailgating prior to entering the stadium, they might get a little too rowdy. But I think those are by far statistical outliers. The vast majority of fans, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say 99% of them are going to treat opposing fans very, very kindly and welcoming, and hope that they have a good experience at the stadium.
Yeah. I pretty much figured it was like that. I mean, we live in a good state. We're lucky we live in a good place, valley-wise, good people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
I'm
good
really
point, right?
mean to the opposing fans. I direct them to the library and tell them that's where you can go buy more red. So that's about the extent of it. No, I thank all of my opposing fans. I love to see them there. I love to hear them. I point them to the library because that's where you can get the gear too.
But you know where the library is?
Oh,
you know where the
absolutely.
library
Absolutely. Spend countless hours there. Countless.
What does the average you get on his SATs there?
Slightly higher than BYU.
You know what? That's a good question.
It's drool. Drool.
Let's
True.
keep it football. Let's keep it
They
football.
got higher
guys.
than that.
It can go crazy, everybody. You see, it's starting to unravel right here.
Hey, that's being nice. I'm
Okay.
outnumbered, man.
I know. You gotta be aggressive. Okay, let's give Utah a chance. Okay, we've got 3 reps here from Utah as fans. What do you guys sell your point? What makes Utah better than BYU?
Yeah, that's a hard question.
Who wants to take a crack at it first?
Okay.
I'll take a quick stab at it real quick.
Go ahead.
And I'll just kind of random thoughts that come to mind. I think when it comes to, when we're talking about Utah specifically with college football, I really think it starts with our coaching staff. Kyle Whittingham and his coordinators and the culture that he's established ever since 2005 is the reason we've seen the success we've had over the years, why we were invited to the Pac-12, why we were able to have success in the Pac-12 recently, and why I think transitioning to the Big 12, I don't think it's a stretch to say, we should be optimistic that we will continue to have success with what Kyle has put into place there. And you see the number of athletes that come out of our program that go into the NFL, the way they are able to recruit talent that isn't necessarily the 4- and 5-star talent that you see USC or Oregon or Texas and Oklahoma get, but they're able to get good talent. And in terms of player development, they're probably the best at doing that than any other program in the country, of getting the most out of the talent that they're able to recruit. And just the product we put on the field. You see the guys that go out there on the field and put every ounce of energy they have into doing what they're supposed to do. This blue-collar mentality of we're going to outwork you, we're going to out-hustle you, and we're going to find a way to win. That's what endears me to the team, and I think that's one of the best ways we can sell Utah football to any BYU fan or to any college football fan.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to disagree with that. They put out a great product on the field. Their coaches are among the best. In fact, BYU's head coach is an understudy of Kyle Whittingham. And so he's brought some of those same things over to BYU. Yes, no arguments there. Great point. Great point.
I think
I will
BYU
give
hurts himself. I'm sorry, good. Yeah, good.
Okay, I was going to say that I will give it to BYU. BYU has produced one of the greatest head football coaches of all time in Kyle Whittingham, the current head coach of the University of
True.
Utah. So there is that crossover as well. Kyle Whittingham played his collegiate ball at BYU and now is at the University of Utah. And I couldn't agree more, Rex. You did such a great job talking about that. As college game day sometimes comes into the state, I saw one of my favorite signs was Kyle Whittingham will take this 2-star sign and turn it into a first round draft pick. And it's just kind of that way that he develops players that don't make big splashes in the scene nationally coming out of high school, but then allows them and develops them into things to NFL talent and does such a great job. So
Yeah,
Kyle
you're
Whittingham and
you are
his
right
staff do
that
a great job.
you are right that BYU produced one of the greatest NCAA coaches. It also produced one of the greatest NFL head coaches in Andy Reid.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. And here's the thing: I'll talk a bit about both sides for just a minute. I actually like to go to both games, but there is a different feel, and I'm not sure if you guys would agree with this or not. Like when I go to the Utah game, I like to go with my adult kids and stuff like that and enjoy it with adults. We give a great time there. But for some reason, when I go to BYU, I like to take my grandkids. And so I don't know why that is. I almost feel like maybe we're at Sunday school or at something like that. But it does feel a little bit different when you go to the games. Love them both. Great experiences, just a little bit different.
Less adult beverages.
And more cougar tails, right? Here's the thing. We'll see if there's anything else that people want to share. But I want to say this to those that are listening. It is amazing because even though we're here to kind of pitch, there's still a lot of respect. And for those that are real fans on both sides, there is mutual respect on both sides about some of the good things that have happened. But it doesn't mean they don't still jive at each other and really push and show their colors. Each side loves their team. Now, before we wrap up, is there anything else that anybody else wants to say, share, or talk about in terms of your team?
I'd like to have a rematch of Ohio State. Have Ohio State come back to Rice Echo, play them again.
That would be good.
We've been spoiled. We saw Michigan a couple of years back on Jim Harbaugh's first season as head coach. We just had Florida come last year. I like the talent that what we've seen so far. But I mean, Penn State would be great. I know that's a rematch as well from our second Rose Bowl. Ohio State rematch. Alabama would be great. I'm not mad about that. That would be fun to have them. Would they come to Salt Lake City? Well, that's another story.
I think teams are afraid to go to Utah. Like, you'll never see Alabama come here because I don't think they want what's going to happen if they come here. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that when Florida decided for the first time since 1991 to leave the state for an out-of-conference game, it happened to be Utah, and they ended up losing to us. So I don't know if we'll ever see Florida leave the state again for an out-of-conference game. But yeah, it would be great to get another SEC school our way. I would rather it be a higher profile school. I wouldn't be too excited about a Vanderbilt or a Mississippi State, for example. But if we could pull a Tennessee or Georgia or something like that, that'd be fantastic. I'd love to see a school like that come into our backyard and see how they fare.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, as we get towards the end here, is there any other thing? Anybody want to pitch any last thing? Share one last thing before we tie this thing up? We're good?
Big 12 championship up for grabs this year. Go Utes.
Yep. And a spot in the playoffs.
That's right.
Yeah. I love that they're on the same conference again, and we're going to see that game over and over and over.
I was just going to say I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to I'm looking forward to the rivalry again, having it mean something in conference. I mean, it always means something, but having it mean something in conference. But I'm also looking forward to. I like it to be a great game, win or lose. Obviously, I like to see us win, but I really like it to be a competitive game. I'm not a big fan of the blowouts. I mean, they're fun. They're fun for the the rivalry schmack talk. But as a true football fan, you want it to come down to the last possession. That kind of stuff where it's just intense and so I'm really looking forward to that. Hopefully the product that BYU brings, the product that Utah brings this year is going to be competitive and exciting and bring some muster back to the rivalry.
Awesome. Well, guys,
I was just say one final thought about the Big 12, as you mentioned about the rivalry and having it be in conference again and having it carry a little more weight meaning now that it's a conference game again. I'm glad the Big 12 in developing their scheduling format recognized what the Holy War means to fans and put it or structured it so that every year that game's going to take place where, with other teams, we have this weird, crazy rotation basis for us playing the other teams in the Big 12 that I don't quite understand. But they did protect the rivalry, so that's going to be played every year and whenever it's a year, so long as we're in the Big 12 together.
That's great. Yeah, that is awesome. Well, guys, I do appreciate this. This was great. Thank you for being on the panel today. I want to thank the listeners for coming in and hearing what we had to say. It's always fun to get a peek into the details of rivalries. This is a special one. It's an emotional one, and it takes neighbors and family members, and it gets them at each other for a short time, but then everybody gets back to normal, kind of, afterwards. So I will tell everybody, I want to encourage you to check out this game. It's going to be on Saturday, November 9th, the Holy War. Don't miss it. Now, as we wrap up, once again, thank you to the panel for being with us. And I want to remind you all out there that there's a lot of strange and unexpected in our reality. So keep your eyes, ears, and minds open. And until next time, stay safe.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.